Chapter 1. A Broken Heart and a Missing Locket. It was a cold, rainy afternoon when Detective Leo received the call. The voice on the other end was shaky, filled with worry. "Detective, please, I need your help. It's gone. My grandmother's locket. Someone took it." Leo recognized the voice immediately. Mrs. Holloway, a kind, elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. She wasn't wealthy, but she was respected. Her house, small but well kept, was filled with memories of a life well lived. If she was calling, it meant something truly important had been stolen. "I'll be there soon, Mrs. Holloway," Leo assured her, grabbing his coat and heading into the stormy evening. By the time he reached her house, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows across the wooden steps. Mrs. Holloway stood at the door, gripping a handkerchief. Her eyes, red and swollen, told Leo that this wasn't just about a lost necklace. It was about losing a piece of herself. "Come in, Detective," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Leo stepped inside, immediately noticing the atmosphere of the home. The scent of lavender lingered in the air, mixing with the faint smell of old books and wooden furniture. A small fireplace crackled, adding warmth to the otherwise gloomy evening. "Please sit," Mrs. Holloway said, leading him to the living room. She sat across from him, her hands trembling. "That locket, my grandmother gave it to me when I was a little girl. It's the only thing I have left of her. It was stolen from my jewelry box last night." Leo leaned forward. "Tell me everything you remember. When did you last see it?" She hesitated, then pointed to a wooden jewelry box on a small table. "I always keep it in there. Last night, before bed, I opened the box to check on it, like I always do. This morning, when I woke up, it was gone." Leo examined the box. It wasn't damaged, no scratches, no signs of forced entry. The thief had been careful. He glanced around the room. Nothing else seemed disturbed. No broken windows, no drawers left open. Whoever took the locket knew exactly what they were looking for. "Does anyone else have a key to your house?" Leo asked. Mrs. Holloway bit her lip. "Only my grandson, Ethan. But he would never—" Her voice trailed off. Leo noted the hesitation. He had seen it before, doubt creeping in, even when the heart refused to believe it. "Anyone else who visited recently?" She sighed. "Just Maria, my neighbor. She helps me with groceries sometimes. And the young man from the antique shop, James. He came by last week to look at some furniture I wanted to sell." Leo jotted down their names. 3 possible suspects. But what was the motive? Then something caught his eye. A small, golden piece on the carpet near the door. He bent down and picked it up. A tiny clasp, the kind that held a locket together. The case was just beginning, and already Leo felt it in his gut. This wasn't just a theft. It was something deeper, something personal. Chapter 2. The Suspects. The next morning, Leo decided to start with the most obvious lead. Ethan, Mrs. Holloway's grandson. Ethan was a 22-year-old college student, tall and thin, with messy brown hair. When Leo arrived at his apartment, he found Ethan sitting on the couch, textbooks spread out before him. Detective Leo? Ethan said, surprised. Is something wrong? Leo took a seat across from him. I need to ask you about your grandmother's missing locket. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, someone stole it. She said you have a key to her house. Yeah, but I would never take it. That locket means everything to her. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. I haven't been to her house in days. Leo studied him carefully. No nervous fidgeting. No avoiding eye contact. If he was lying, he was good at it. Where were you last night? At the library, studying. You can check with my friend Olivia. She was with me the whole time. Leo nodded. Ethan didn't seem like a prime suspect, but he couldn't rule him out yet. Next, Leo visited Maria, the neighbor. She was in her garden, trimming her rose bushes when Leo arrived. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair tied in a neat bun. Detective? What brings you here? She asked, wiping dirt from her hands. Leo explained the situation. Maria frowned. That's awful. I know how much she loved that locket. She crossed her arms. But I had nothing to do with it. I was home all night. Did you notice anything strange recently? Any unusual visitors? Maria thought for a moment. Well, there was that young man, James, from the antique shop. He seemed very interested in Mrs. Holloway's things, kept asking if she had any old jewelry she wanted to sell. That was interesting. Was James after more than just furniture? Chapter 3. The Antique Dealer. Leo's next stop was James's Antiques, a small shop filled with old clocks, silverware, and vintage paintings. James, a man in his early 30s, greeted him with a practiced smile. Detective, what can I do for you? I'm looking into a missing locket. Mrs. Holloway mentioned you were at her house last week. James's smile faltered slightly. Yes, I was there. She wanted to sell some furniture, but nothing valuable. Why? She said you asked about jewelry. James chuckled nervously. I ask everyone about jewelry. It's my business. But I didn't steal anything, Detective. Leo noticed something behind the counter. A small glass case filled with gold necklaces, rings, and trinkets. Mind if I take a look? James hesitated. I buy from a lot of people. Leo's gaze locked onto one particular item, a locket. His heart pounded. Open the case. James swallowed hard, fumbling with the key. As soon as the case opened, Leo picked up the locket. He turned it over. Mrs. Holloway's initials were engraved on the back. James sighed, rubbing his face. All right, I didn't steal it. I bought it. A guy came in late last night, said he needed cash fast. Leo's eyes narrowed. Who? I don't know his name. Young, maybe early 20s, brown hair, thin, seemed nervous. Leo's stomach dropped. Ethan. Chapter 4. The Truth Hurts. That evening, Leo confronted Ethan again. This time, Ethan's face turned pale when he saw the locket in Leo's hand. You sold it, Leo said quietly. Ethan's eyes filled with shame. I didn't mean to. I was desperate. I needed money for school. Leo sighed. Did you think your grandmother wouldn't notice? Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. I thought I'd buy it back before she realized. But I was too late. Leo's expression softened. He had seen cases like this before, people making bad choices out of desperation. But that didn't make it right. You need to tell her the truth, Leo said. That night, Ethan sat across from his grandmother, tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Grandma. Mrs. Holloway, her heart heavy, sighed deeply. I'm hurt, Ethan, but I forgive you. Leo watched as Ethan placed the locket back in her hands. It wasn't just an object. It was a memory, a piece of love, passed down through generations. As Leo left the house, the rain had stopped. The night was quiet. Another case closed, but this one wasn't just about solving a crime. It was about redemption. As Leo stepped into the quiet night, he took a deep breath. Some cases ended with handcuffs, others ended with lessons. This one was about family, about mistakes, and about second chances. With the locket back where it belonged, he walked away, knowing that sometimes the hardest mysteries to solve were the ones of the heart. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this mystery,